Welcome to Exit Algorithms, the podcast where we decode what it really takes to unlock growth, streamline operations, and prepare your business for a high value exit. I'm your host, Pete Vera, and today I'm joined by Cameron Bishop, Managing Director at Raincatcher, which is an award winning national business brokerage and M&A advisory firm built to help entrepreneurs maximize the value of their life work. Cameron brings over 40 years of executive experience across high growth leadership, digital transformation, and M&A, and including his own career scaling a business to 400 million in revenue and executing 40 buy side and 20 sell side deals across more than $500 million in enterprise value. So I'm really excited to get into this today. Cameron, welcome to the show.
Hey, great, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Cameron, for people listeners that haven't heard of you before, can you tell us a bit about your background and yeah, how'd you get started in business?
Great, thanks. Yeah, happy to. For an investment banker, which is what I am today, I have a very unusual career path. Wasn't planned, just how it worked out. I actually have a degree in journalism from the University of Missouri School of Journalism. Started my career as an advertising copywriter in a small technical magazine publishing company based here in Kansas City, where I live. And that company, over a period of time, was sold off and acquired by the Macmillan Book Publishing Company out of New York, which at that time was a Fortune 100 company. And they said, "Hey, we really kind of like this business. We want you to grow. We want you to go out and buy companies." And they didn't tell us how to do it. They just said, "Do it."
Hmm.
So that's what we started doing. And it was a little bit like dropping the 6-month-old baby in the swimming pool and saying, "Swim." We just did it. As I have admitted on a number of occasions, I had the good fortune and misfortune to do the very first deal the company did. And ultimately, I screwed it up pretty badly. So I got a very, very fast PhD in M&A, deal due diligence, which has served me well ever since then. And I will tell you right off, the key mistake I made wasn't anything related to what you would look at as technical due diligence on a deal. We dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, made
Hmm.
sure everything added up, audit work, circulation work, anything you would document. Where we fell short, where I fell short, was around assessing people and understanding them and listening to them properly. We didn't do that. So, over the course of a year, we lost some key talent, and thankfully, it was a very small deal, but we learned a tremendous amount from that on how to improve how we assessed and evaluated deals and made our decisions on whether to acquire or not acquire, and of course, what price we were going to pay. But over time, that company we grew from 7 million when I started there. I was there for 23 years, left as the CEO when we were, as you mentioned on your intro, doing 400 million in revenue and about 100 million in EBITDA profit. I wrote a business plan, shopped it around the country, literally coast to coast for a year, and partnered with JP Morgan Chase Bank's private equity arm. And we built a business literally from my kitchen table to about 120 million in revenue on that deal. Then worked for as a partner in a consulting firm for 5 years doing exit and transition planning. Did a very difficult, complex turnaround on a $60 million charitable business. Got
Hmm.
bored during COVID and said, "What do I like to do? I like buying and selling companies." And I found Raincatcher, and we were fully aligned on our ethical standards, our mission, vision, and values in helping business owners at the time they decide to sell. And that's where I am today. I'm a partner, managing director, and I am about 3 weeks shy of being here for 5 years.
Wow. Yeah, amazing story. What a cool experience, I'm sure. Especially during all the competition in the M&A market. It's impressive that you guys survived multiple recessions and real estate flippancy that had like jeopardized a lot of people, right?
For sure. Well, yeah, the recession, the deep recession, kind of the '07 to '09 or 10 time period. In that case, I was doing acquisitions in the media industry,
Mm.
and the that market was further complicated not only by the deep recession but by the disenfranchisement of traditional media companies by the internet. So we had a double challenge in that industry sector. It was a very difficult time.
Wow. Yeah, I bet. Yeah, and it's really great you have so much experience in different industries as well as, doing during a turnaround yourself. Um, I'm curious from your perspective, what do you see as the common first constraints a business has when they're trying to scale?
Well, on the scale side, typically the first thing is that they're not properly capitalized. And I have a good friend who did a venture capital backed startup in an incubator that was owned by H&R Block, and he had the perfect statement. His business started to really explode rapidly. Got the investment team at H&R Block really excited, and they wanted to start really spending money on his business. And he kind of pulled the reins back and he said, "Wait a minute, guys." Uh, I know 50% of my strategy is right and 50% of my strategy is wrong, but I haven't figured out yet which half is which. And
Hmm,
that's a key factor that businesses that are scaling often run into is they may improperly assess the part of the strategy that's working versus that that's not, and then they might find out that they're undercapitalized in order to properly fund the investment they're going to need to really rapidly scale. And oftentimes they significantly underestimate the kind and volume of talent that they're going to need in order to successfully scale.
for sure. I appreciate it, summing it into probably one of, the most important thing as you scale. Um, Cash flow, right? Cash is king, and um,
Cash is king.
yeah, can't ignore the balance sheet and P&Ls. Um, I'd love to hear, as you grow the business and then towards the end when you're looking to sell. Um, yeah, I'd love to hear from your perspective. What are maybe the top value drivers of a business looking to exit in the near future?
Yeah. So for I used to teach a class for a local university for the small business administration, primarily for smaller, earlier stage companies, not true VC, but just smaller companies, 1 million, 2 million in revenue kinds of businesses. And in one of the first classes, I said, you need to begin with the end in mind. So everybody that owns a company is eventually going to leave that company. They can do it voluntarily of their own initiative, or someday it's going to be involuntary. So you might as well have an exit strategy to begin with. And across in acquiring businesses to buy a company, you generally look at around 50 deals to close one deal. So I've probably looked at 600 deal opportunities. And one of the things you see on an extremely consistent basis is that business owners spend about 95% of their time working in their business and only about 5% of their time working on their business. And most don't even understand the difference between the two or why that actually matters. And those are key factors. Have an exit plan in mind, have an exit timetable in mind, and plan for value creation because owners typically they're hands-on in their business on a day-to-day basis and they are focused on generating revenue, uh, avoiding taxes to the highest degree possible, and having a distribution left over at the end of the year to pay themselves with, because most of these companies are pass-through legal entities, either LLCs or S corps, but they don't really understand the difference between focusing on value creation and the three key factors that they live with on a daily basis.
Sure. Yeah, and you mentioned one thing especially is the, owner dependence, especially in the smaller business. What are some maybe recommendations you'd have? Like how long in advance should they be grooming, a team that can carry the business forward and make it, ultimately more valuable?
Yeah, well, that depends a little bit on the type of business and definitely on the personal goals and objectives of the business owner. Sadly, in many cases, when people who own a company want to sell it, either it's a family owned or a privately owned company, and they call us here at Raincatcher to say, I'm thinking about selling my business. Our first question for them is always, why are you thinking about selling?
Hmm.
And it's not for us to judge what their reason is, it's only to understand what their motives are, what their needs are, what their timetable is. And as I say, sadly, in some cases, it's due to some kind of family distress, a divorce, etc.,
Hmm.
or worse, often a health issue for the owner, which can drive the timetable and what their priorities are in a transaction. And today, sadly, unlike past generations, the vast majority of these business owners are baby boomer generation, and they don't have children who have any interest in working in the family business.
Hmm.
So, since the company is generally their primary source of potential generational wealth and certainly retirement funds, they're left with no option but to sell the company. And that's why they approach us. And that's a kind of a really key motivator for them. But once we've established what their needs and motives are and what their priorities are in a buyer for the business, which we like to kind of pride ourselves as both investment bankers and match.com, and we
Hmm.
try to align the interests of buyers with the priorities of our client who is selling. So whether it's culture, protecting employees, etc., we work to try to help achieve all of those goals. Uh, but in terms of timing, in a perfect world, if they begin preparing for an exit 5 years before they plan to exit, that's a perfect world. Honestly, it rarely happens. In our world as investment bankers, we are thrilled if we get somebody who started working on it even a year ahead of time, much less 2 or 3 years ahead of time, because a lot of the actions that they need to take and the changes they need to make can't happen overnight. And
Hmm.
they sometimes think they will, but they don't.
Sure. Yeah, I bet you find a lot of businesses have, a number of issues that take time, such as, owner independence, customer concentration, also, that'll become a huge value driver, right? And create and take some time to diversify the business's revenues. So I can,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
When and one of the things they don't really understand what a buyer is going to want to know and what information they're going to want to see.
Hmm.
Because I'd say 95% or more of our clients have never sold a company before, never acquired a company before. So when we go to market their company, we gather a tremendous amount of information at the very beginning. We call it sell side due diligence. We're gathering all of the information that we know a buyer is going to ask about for that kind of a business. And in our firm, Raincatcher, we are very much industry agnostic. We represent business owners with everything from SaaS platform software companies, any kind of digital company, any kind of digital or marketing, advertising agencies, right through all sorts of business services, whether it's like HVAC or roofing, etc. all the way up through heavy construction companies. And the commonality of the shortcomings in many of these businesses is identical across the board. So, as you mentioned a minute ago, Pete, the first problem or challenge we see is really poor accounting.
Mm,
If the accounting isn't accurate, no buyer is going to buy it, or the owner is going to have to invest a significant amount of time and money to go to outside accounting experts to get their accounting cleaned up. Most of
mm,
these owners do their accounting on what's referred to as a cash basis, but almost all buyers want to see accounting executed on what's referred to as a GAAP accrual basis. And I'll
mm,
explain why in a minute, but also buyers borrow money. They don't pay all cash for a business. And the banks want to see the acquired company's financials on an accrual basis. So if a business owner's accounting isn't handled in that way, oftentimes they're going to have to delay a sale process while they go to an outside firm to restate all of their financials. So that's
wow.
issue number one. Number
Yeah.
two is, as you mentioned it, we refer to it as owner dependency. If the owner of the business is the key holder of critical knowledge, or if he or she is a specialist in the sector that they happen to own a company in, and there's no one else in the company that knows that information, that's a real red flag for buyers.
Mm,
Ironically, most business owners sell because they have plans to retire in some period of time. But if the business is highly dependent on them, buyers are going to expect them to stay on for some period of time that's usually negotiated. Because while buyers are open to taking on risk because they're acquiring a business, at the same time, every one of them is extremely risk averse, and they're going to do everything they can to reduce or mitigate risk when they're spending a lot of money to buy a business. Same holds true if that business owner is the key holder of client relationships, is out doing the business development. If a customer has a question, if they're calling that owner's cell phone, that's a red flag.
mm,
And that's why they need to learn how to delegate to secondary management and to some kind of a sales team in the process. Also, one of our key litmus tests is we'll ask this owner, do you take a vacation? And if
mm.
they say proudly, oh, no, I haven't been able to take a vacation in 2 or 3 years, they don't understand that's not a good thing. They want to see a business that will continue to thrive if that owner is no longer there. The owner who tells me, and I've got a client like this right now, a few months ago, he spent like 3 weeks completely off the grid hunting in Africa. That's a very
Mm.
good sign that his business didn't have a hiccup while he was gone because he had the systems and the organizational structure in place. So, owner dependency or the lack thereof is a key factor, and business owners struggle with this because most don't know how to delegate, but also to have a number two manager in place means they're going to have to invest into that position, which also means they're going to take home a smaller distribution at the end of the year. And they don't understand how that investment can create a much greater return on their investment in the form of value creation when they go to sell the company.
Well said. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and you mentioned when we're talking about clean financials, preparing the books for a sale. Um, yeah, as we come across a lot of businesses where the P&L and the tax return don't match up at all, and yeah,
Yep,
they're
all the time.
minimizing the amount of taxes they have to give to the IRS and taking into account all the add backs, etc. I was curious though, you said cash basis versus accrual basis. I was wondering why that
Yeah,
matters.
yeah, great question. So, the, as I mentioned, when we are marketing a company, We do a lot of work to research what kinds of buyers might be interested in our client's company in order to buy it. So we do a lot of research to identify private equity firms, family offices, strategics. There is a new class of buyer called an independent sponsor, which is an individual who has some kind of big money behind them and they want to buy the company and run it. So we do a lot of research, we put together a list, we market to that list. We send them an anonymous teaser because we're very sensitive about confidentiality for our clients. And when these interested buyers contact us, the first question they ask, as I mentioned, is why does the owner want to sell? How does their financials look? Do they have customer concentration, meaning if they have more than 20% of their revenue comes from any one client, that's a huge red flag for buyers. They
Mm.
also want to know about vendor dependency. If they have only one vendor who they depend on for a critical component of their product or service, that's a big red flag. But then we move further into accounting, and they want to know what the gross profit margin is on that company. Every type of business or industry has kind of a standardized gross profit margin. Let's say hypothetically it's 30%. If a business has a 40% gross profit margin, that's in their favor. It's either going to be a net neutral or a buyer may increase the price they're willing to pay for that. If
Mm.
they're at the industry average, then it's a non issue generally. But if they're below that, oftentimes that's at best a yellow flag and often a red flag, and buyers will walk.
Mm.
And so that's why you need to have accrual based accounting because it aligns the costs with the actual revenue generated in any one month. On a cash basis, you typically book the revenue or the sales whenever they come in, and then if the expenses come in a month or 2 months or 3 months later, that's when you pay those bills. So they don't align the revenue with the costs. So a buyer can't determine what the true gross profit margin of the company is. And that's a key factor for many of them. It's a make it or break it in a lot of cases. I've seen potentially interested buyers walk for any one of those five factors that I just described.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, it makes a ton of sense. And yeah, I was actually curious. You touched a bit about your process of getting your business ready to go to market. I was curious if you could get just maybe a high level of some of the mechanics of that and the process of having a really good package when you go to sell your business.
Yeah. Well, so our firm Raincatcher has been in business for about 11 years now. And again, I'm one of five partners and managing directors in the firm, and we have really refined and proven our process. So we actually are what's called a lower middle market bank. Our clients generally have 2 million to 10 million in EBITDA revenue, which is an underserved market sector. Traditional Main Street business brokers, for the most part, can't properly represent a business of this size because the financial aspects become far more complicated around net working capital or other financial factors. And the big banks won't touch companies of this size. So we actually run a process like the big banks, but we are approaching this lower middle market where they don't have many options to get professional investment banking representation. So, Pete, if you were to call me and say, hey, Cam, I'm thinking about selling my company, our process, we would sign an NDA for you. We would have you upload the last 3 years of your monthly income statements in accrual format, your tax returns. One of my partners is a licensed CPA, spent 15 years in the audit practice with KPMG, and he will analyze your financials in deep detail. and we will create what's called a recast set of financials and identify an adjusted EBITDA number. So there are a lot of things that a business owner will book as an expense in his company that a buyer would not incur. So we can legitimately add those back to optimize defensible profitability to maximize value creation. We then come back to you with a brief strategic presentation about how we operate and what your recast numbers look like, what your adjusted EBITDA number is. We do our research on market comps, plus based on our own experience, we do 45, 50 plus deals a year to determine what the valuation range is. We don't come at you with some number, especially a highball number. That's a
Mm.
lose lose. This is, for most business owners, maybe the single most important decision they'll ever make in their life, certainly from an economic standpoint. So we try to provide them with the information they need to make the most intelligent decision for themselves and their family. So we provide a low end of the valuation range, a midpoint, which is where we think it's most likely to trade, and then a high end if we can really find a buyer not to cover off the ball for them. But owners have to realize that the market sets the price on any deal. And I don't
Mm.
think I've met a business owner yet who didn't come to us with valuation expectations, which were anything close to market. They always think
Mm.
it's going to be worth far more than any buyer is going to be willing to pay. So we have to kind of explain to them why they are where they are. And we go to market on all of our deals on what's called an open bid basis. So again, we don't want to create a structure where we're bidding against ourselves or they're bidding against our number. And oftentimes we can get that higher end number. But then if they say, yeah, I'd like for you to sell my company, we sign an engagement letter with them. As I mentioned, we have them upload a ton of diligence information up
Mm.
front. We review all of that with a fine tooth comb so that we get to know the business inside and out. And we use that information to create a very sophisticated marketing book called a CIM, which stands for a confidential information memorandum. We do our research on potential buyers. We market the deal. We get interest, and we ask those interested potential buyers for an indication of interest letter. And we provide a lot of very specific criteria that we want to see in that letter. And from there, we'll put that in a grid matrix for our client because most don't really understand any of that. So we're looking at the total enterprise value, which is the all-in purchase price, the deal structure, the deal terms, the fit of that buyer with our client based on their aspirations and culture, etc., but also the capability, the financial capability of that buyer to actually do the deal if they win.
Mm.
Then we go into a stage two. We have deeper, more confidential information for those buyers to review that made it through the indication of interest. At that point, they all want to meet the owners. Oftentimes, they want to tour facilities, and we never leave our clients alone with a buyer, so we're always on site. If a management presentation is required, we'll write the presentation for our clients, we'll rehearse them on how to present it, and we'll be right there with them to support them through that process. Then we ask for a letter of intent that's even more detailed than our indication of interest. We'll again review all of that with our clients, and they will pick the one bid that they want to go with. That's not our decision, it's theirs. We educate them on the pros and cons of each offer, but they make that call. And most buyer or sellers don't understand that once you sign a letter of intent, that buyer typically gets 90 days of exclusivity where we can't continue to market the deal. It's off the market, and they're going to start spending money for auditors to audit the financials, their lawyers to write drafts of the contract. They'll have HR people review HR If it involves any kind of manufacturing or construction, they're going to have EPA experts come in. They're going to review legal diligence, technology diligence, all of that during that time period. And we're right there with our clients. We provide kind of a white glove concierge service. So we can help recommend M&A attorneys for them, with tax experts, wealth management experts. But we're on every call with every one of those experts to advise our clients. We read every draft of the contract, and we're there until a wire transfer hits their bank account at the very end of the deal. But that process, these owners need to understand, typically takes 9 to 10 months from the day they sign an engagement with us. And that's a national average. Doesn't matter what size the deal, what kind of business or industry. That's this. Sometimes you can shorten it. Sometimes there's hiccups along the way that make it extend, but that's the typical time frame they need to understand. They can't just wake up and say, I'm selling, and have a deal done in a month or 2 months.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Again, it goes back to preparing in advance and having a bit of a runway um, there. Yeah, thank you for sharing the process. I was curious, do you use any AI in your throughout your processes, or how has technology impacted your business?
Well, technology, AI in particular, has been frankly fantastic for our business. So we've engaged with an outside firm that specializes in supporting investment bankers, and we have an absolutely amazing tool that helps us move through our very time consuming processes much, much faster. Uh, we use a number of the AI engines, whether it's Gemini with the Gmail Google platform, which is what we work on in our company, or Chat GPT or Grok, whichever one, because we do a tremendous amount of work on any industry that we go into. Uh, there are times when I might have 50 or 60 hours of my time and at least one other member of our team's time just researching an industry. So, for example, we represent a lot of businesses in various aspects of the construction industry. I'm the partner that generally handles any construction industry related jobs. In certain sectors, we need to do a lot of market analysis, a lot of trend analysis, and we're going deep in search. But today, with all of these AI tools, what used to take me 50 or 60 hours, it could be an hour or two now, and they often uncover information that even in my deepest dive research, I didn't find. So
Yeah,
it's been an amazing benefit for us, and it allows us to prepare or create a more detailed, comprehensive SIM, our marketing book for our clients. So it becomes a win-win.
amazing. Yeah, no, that checks out. And you enjoy using Gemini probably the most. Is it kind of satisfying your needs?
Yeah, the Gemini, I think it's Pro 5, if I remember right. Yeah, that's our go-to because again, we're on the Google Gmail platform, and Gemini will maintain confidentiality when we're doing proprietary search information for a
Nice.
client, as opposed to, say, using the public version of ChatGPT as just one example.
Yeah, that's important too. Google invested millions and millions into into making Gemini. So, and the data pool it draws from is, arguably the
Yeah,
best. So, yeah,
yeah,
I've
yeah.
been using it
But
to.
our team, we've used, I know some of our guys have used Claude, Grok, Perplexity, ChatGPT, Gemini. Some will subscribe to a second ones, and they'll run the same query on two different platforms and see how much data crosses or conflicts in order to refine the work we're doing. But yeah, it's been a fantastic addition to our business to provide an even more professional service for our sell side clients.
Yeah, amazing. I'm curious your perspective too, having seen multiple disruptive technologies, since the internet and in your business throughout your business career. Um, where do you see AI playing into that in terms of, is it just a lot of hype? Is there going to be a bubble like there was at the top .com era? And what do you think on, where it's going in the future?
Well, I think it's going to disrupt different industries to different degrees. So, again, in the construction industry, so much of revenue generation is dependent on having physical boots and hands on the street. We're a few days away from closing a deal to sell a pavement preservation company based in Southern California. They do a resurfacing process on asphalt roadways. Uh, they can certainly leverage AI in their back office operations to do a lot of administrative work, whether it's enhancing accounting. Most
Hmm.
specifically, it'll likely really have a positive impact on their ability to more accurately bid jobs because our client works strictly for government entities, cities, counties, municipalities that are all low bid based. And I think AI is going to be a tremendous tool for them from that standpoint. It'll
Hmm.
also probably help them logistically on where they put their trucks and work crews, how long each job is going to take. But it's not going to replace, at least not for anywhere close to the foreseeable future, the actual human beings that have to physically do that work.
Hmm.
Now, take a law firm, for example.
Yeah.
You could, between templates that have already existed coupled with AI, wow, that's going to be a disenfranchising factor in those businesses, probably similarly in some other soft skills type businesses like consulting, etc. So I think it'll depend very much, but on a given industry, but I think every industry will benefit.
Yeah. Wow, yeah. And that was going to be my next question is like, which type of businesses do you think will be affected most? But yeah, makes sense, especially, there's so many documents online. You could give the AI um, LLM just as, massive amount of context to be able to produce a quality output. Um,
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But also, I think I read something the other day that a lot of CEOs haven't really identified a cost savings from it. Some have identified, similar to what I described as the benefit in our business, it's become a value added enhancement for existing jobs. It's not replacing jobs, it's an add on for, and I can't identify how many types of businesses where that's going to be the case, but apparently that is a discovery or realization that a lot of business owners are finding today.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Yeah, it makes sense. And you said too, it's gonna be a while before robots are gonna be able to replace humans. And so a lot of those trades are probably, you know, decades away, or who knows if that'll even happen, if it would be profitable to replace humans in that way.
Yeah, I think that I've already talked to my wife and I have 5 kids and 8 grandkids with the ninth on the way, and I've talked to my children about my grandchildren. The old school of thought was you got to go to college, but there is such huge demand for skilled tradesmen. The compensation is so high in many of these that the ROI for college might not make sense, and you're maybe better protected from a career path in a skilled trade. So
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a changing mindset for many parents today who have younger children.
Absolutely. Yeah, disrupting the job market for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, great, Cameron. Really appreciate all the insights you shared today. Um, I always ask guests this at the end. What is one practical takeaway business owners could implement this week?
I'm going to give you two because I'm not disciplined enough to just do one. So, one of my key management theories always was surround yourself, if you're a CEO or a business owner, surround yourself with people who are smarter than you
Hmm.
and listen to them. Because at the end of the day, you want to get it right, and you have far better odds of getting it right with really intelligent people working alongside you. I always loved that. But my other key message would be as it relates to management in general, but certainly around a transaction to sell a company. My philosophy has always been know what you know how to do well and do it, know what you don't know how to do well, and hire an expert to do it for you. Many business owners, we've seen it time and again, are penny wise and pound foolish, and they just think, well, I sell my XYZ product. What's the difference if I sell my company? And it's tremendously different and far more complex. And this is a flagrant commercial for myself, but investment bankers in general. A good investment banker will far more than pay for him or herself and properly helping represent the owner and market their business. It's a very complex job that is fraught with emotion. It's an emotional roller coaster ride, and there are complexities that virtually no business owner we know has ever dealt with. Like, for example, just around what is cash free, debt free, net working capital. They don't understand how that can materially impact the realized value that they ultimately receive for their business.
Sure. Yeah, especially with a lot of debt, right?
For sure.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Cameron, and we'll wrap it up here. Where's the easiest place listeners can find you?
Yeah, please. I'm happy to talk with anybody. Just to answer questions. We are a no sales pitch organization. We don't believe that that's ethical to try to talk someone into selling their company. I might talk you out of trying to sell your company if I don't think it's going to be in your best interest. But yeah, they can reach me by email at cameron.bishop@raincatcher.com. Our corporate website is www.raincatcher.com, or they can easily find me and message me on LinkedIn.
Great. Yeah, I'll be sure to put all that in the show notes.
Great.
All right. We'll be in touch, Cameron. Have a good one.
Thank you, Pete. It's been a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you for having me.